Welcome to the Oakley Podcast, Trucking Business and Family. I'm Jeremy Kellett, Director of Recruiting here at Oakley Trucking, and I'm your host for this podcast. This is episode 64. So on today's podcast, we're going to visit with Jeff and Lorita Bledsoe. Jeff is an owner-operator with Oakley Trucking and is going to share his miracle story, is what I call it. And they're going to share it with us. He has spent 96 days in the hospital last year and with COVID, and it was as close to death experience as he's ever had. And he is now on the road to recovery. He's going to share his story with everyone here listening to the Oakley Podcast. So very much appreciate them coming up and doing this, and we're going to visit with them here in just a second. But before we get started, let's do our driver spotlight, sponsored by Aero Truck Sales. So driver spotlight is something new I started last week and wanted to do a little something different, and we're doing that this week with two new owner-operators with Oakley Trucking, just to give you a little insight of what's going on with some of our guys here at Oakley Trucking. The first one is Frank Hinkle. Don't know if everybody knows Frank, but he's been here since, I think, 2009, and he pulls an end up for us. He lives in Springfield, Missouri. And Frank hasn't worked since maybe October of last year. He has had some concussion and brain problems and can't get steady enough to be released to drive a truck again. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Frank and his family. I talked to him last week, and it was very hard for him to turn everything in because we've been holding off on hoping he would get released to come back to work, but he called last week and said it just wasn't going to happen and going to have to sell the truck and move on, and hate that for Frank. Hope he does. He said, if I ever do get back to they let me drive, I'll be right back at Oakley. So good luck to you, Frank. Stay in touch with us. The other one I wanted to talk about and congratulate is Ron Hayden. He's been with us 7 years. He pulls a hopper bottom. He's out of Sedalia, Kentucky. Just a great guy. I'm going to tell you, that you want to hear positive things come out of somebody, you talk to Ron Hayden. And he is just a breath of fresh air, excellent with customer service skills, takes care of our equipment all the time, and Ron Hayden is an asset to Oakley Trucking, and I just want to say congratulations on his 7 years and representing Oakley Trucking well. So let's take a quick break and talk about Aero Truck Sales. Keith Wilson and Trey down in Springfield, Missouri, those guys do a fantastic job on selling trucks to owner-operators that are looking to come on to Oakley Trucking, and just want to make sure you guys know about them. We've dealt with them a long time. They are no leases, straight financing, specialize in first-time truck buyers, 5-year or newer tractors, all makes and models, less than 400,000 miles. They run a great program there. The best thing I like about them is service after the sale. Be sure and tell them you heard all this on the Oakley Podcast, and they'll also give you a choice of $600 worth of fuel or $600 truck accessories, or they'll pay half your first month payment if you finance with transport funding. Check them out. Call Keith Wilson at Aero Truck Sales, 573-216-6047. Give them a call and let them know you heard it on the Oakley Podcast. Appreciate everybody listening to the Oakley Podcast. Once again, every week we tell you guys to please get out on YouTube, on social media, and like us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make comments down there best you can to try to get the word out about Oakley Trucking and the Oakley Podcast. We appreciate everybody's help and input. So, all right, well, let's get cranked up with this week's episode. And I have Jeff and Lorita Bledsoe in the office with me today, and we're going to talk about their story with COVID and amongst other things, and how it's affected their life and where they're at now. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Good to be here.
Boy, it's glad to see you. I know that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming in and doing this, because I know it's been a tough road, man, for sure.
Yeah.
Tell everybody who you are, first of all, okay. I guess. Let's start there, Jeff.
I'm Jeff Bledsoe. I'm owner-operator here at Oakley Trucking. My truck number's 9558, and I've been here since November of 19. 19, yeah.
Wife, Lorita?
And this is my wife, Lorita.
Lorita Bledsoe.
Hey, Lorita. How long y'all been married?
24 years.
24.
Kids?
Got 5.
5.
Wow.
His, hers, and ours, but we got 5, yeah. Yeah, I had 2 when we got together, and she had 1.
Awesome.
And then we had 2 together. So we've had a house full for a long time.
Sounds like a great Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of company. They all live around you? Pretty close?
Yeah. I have one daughter that moved to Wisconsin last year, but we stay in touch on the phone, and I've been to see her once. But being down, we hadn't had the opportunity to go back up there.
Right. And y'all are in Sulphur Springs,
We're
Texas.
in Sulphur Springs, Texas, yeah.
You lived there your whole life?
My whole life.
Sulphur. We got a lot of guys from around there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. You can't throw a rock without hitting an Oakley truck.
Yeah. Now, what do you do, Lorita?
I went to school for being a nurse, and I was a nurse when Jeff and I met. And then after we started building our family and having kids, I've been a stay-at-home mom.
Nice. That's good.
Yep.
And what do y'all do in your free time? What's the hobbies? What's the fun stuff to do?
Well, I have a fun one. I'm a minister.
All right.
And I have a couple of friends that have churches that when they're off, I step in and preach for them.
Good for you.
Yeah, over at the Crimson River Cowboy Church. They're in Cooper.
Cooper, Texas.
Yep, Cooper, Texas.
Good.
And
what about you, Loretta?
I have recently acquired a new hobby, and it is hunting arrowheads. So I go hiking and go down to the river. There's a riverbed close to where we live, and man, I have just really enjoyed the time in nature and getting a little bit of peace and quiet because, I've been Jeff's main caregiver since November of last year.
Right.
And so now that he's up a little bit stronger and I can leave him for a little while, I
Get
really
back.
recharge when I go out and do that.
You found some good ones?
3 so far.
Oh.
Which it's a new hobby. I just started. Yeah, but I found 3.
It reminds me back in Biggers, Arkansas, where I'm from, up in northeast Arkansas, that every year that when people tilled up the ground for the farm, they got ready to plant, man, there would be people walking the farm out there and looking for arrowheads and just have it was neat to find a bunch of them, I didn't do much of that. I think I did that when I was a little kid. Seemed like Mom took me out there or somebody, but you'd always see people. I'm sure they still do it up there. So anyway, good stuff. Well, good to hear from you guys. Good that you came up here and share this story. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a lot, so, you listeners out there, we may go on for a little while here because I think this is a story I personally want to hear and haven't heard all the details, but I think it's something that we all need to hear, and I want to, especially since you're one of ours. You guys are one of ours at Oakley Trucking, and even Jeff, I don't know if he said this a while ago, but he was with us back in the 90s.
Yeah.
When
96 and 7.
Yeah, back in my early days, too. I remember you being here before. So let's dive off into this story that we've got. So Jeff was currently an owner-operator with us. This was back in, November? So all of a sudden, one day, you wake up and you got to go to the hospital? Is that how this started?
I got fever. 102.8 is where it started, and it got as high as 104 point something or other. But, I thought, man, I got the flu. I don't get sick very often, so I waited it out a couple of days, about 3 days, and finally I told my wife, I said, I'm not getting better. This fever's getting higher, and I couldn't get rid of it. So I go down to the local clinic, and they give me the COVID test. While I'm sitting in the pickup, they won't even let you come in the office. And they said, yeah, you got it. Go to the pharmacy, get vitamin D or something. I forgot what it was. So I go back home, and 2 days later, I'm so sick that I started having fever seizures. And I bumped my head pretty good on the way to the ground, so they called the ambulance, and they was going to carry me to the Sulphur Springs Hospital. And I didn't care too much for that idea, so we went to Greenville. Well, we get to Greenville about 5:30 in the morning, and I sat there till about 5 o'clock that afternoon. They had no rooms. Oh. No, they checked with all the hospitals in Dallas. They didn't have no rooms. So when they called down at Tyler, they had a room. They said, yeah, send him down here. So I wind up down at Tyler at Mother Frances Hospital. And Lorita can't come with me. When she dropped me off at Greenville, that was it. They wouldn't let you come in. So when I got down there, they give me an infusion of antibodies. Someone who had had COVID. He said, I'm going to start there. And they'd give me some other stuff, but they did that. That's the last thing I remember. So for another 32 or 33 days, I was unconscious, but I was been put on the vent. I couldn't breathe for myself.
That quick?
That quick. Mm-hmm. I mean, just like that. And I guess you can take over from there because
You don't remember anything.
I don't remember anything. And she can tell you it's a. I
So
tell
how
everybody
long-
this is her testimony a lot because she was just left alone. I can't make no truck decisions, no house decisions. She's got it on her own. And then here I am in the hospital. They're telling her, not looking good. We're not going to give you no false hope. It's just not looking good.
And
He
this
may,
was
he
in-
may not make it.
This was within a week that
Within
you
a week,
had the fever.
yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm not one to be sick, but I have never been this sick, in my life. And so I basically lost consciousness because they knocked me out to put me on the vent where they could help me breathe because I wasn't breathing for myself.
Yeah, he held off making the decision to allow them to put him on the vent for about 5 days. And then after that 5 or 6 days, they said, we can give you comfort care if you choose not to go on the vent. So basically they were saying it's the vent or you're not going to make it.
And back then, that was probably when it was. If you got on the vent,
Yes.
it
Oh,
wasn't,
yeah. That
it
was
wasn't
it.
good. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's why we were really, he really suffered there a few days, struggling for every single breath because he was trying to not go on the vent. Because at that time, your chances for survival do decrease dramatically once you do go on the vent. And so it was just, we were at that point, and he talked with our daughter. They did allow our daughter, which was an amazing blessing that doesn't normally happen. Because she worked on the COVID unit at the hospital that she works at, and she, was exposed to COVID every day and was COVID negative, they said, okay, if you want to go in and see your dad and have that discussion with him, we're going to make an exception. So it was an amazing blessing. I think he needed that because, you're so sick and none of your family can come. When the nurses come in, they're all, gowned from head to toe, and it can be a scary, lonely experience.
Oh, I
and
bet.
so he was just so overjoyed when he found out that Allison was going to get to come in and visit with him about his options. And so,
Was this before? So this was before the ventilator?
yes,
Okay.
right before the ventilator.
Yeah, I don't remember it, but
And so he ended up going on the ventilator after being in the hospital less than a week. And
That had to be devastating to you.
Yes, and I was COVID positive myself. And so, man, it was just such a helpless feeling to be sitting at home in the recliner, watching TV, eating a donut, and I know my husband's in the hospital fighting for his life. So that was a really hard, I think the hardest time for me was that first month where he was on the ventilator, and the closest I could get to a visit with him after my COVID had cleared was they would allow me to drive to Tyler, which is a little bit over an hour drive, and stand in front of his door, which had a window and blinds on it, and they would allow me to look at him. But I wanted to touch him so bad, and as being a nurse myself, I knew it was bad. I knew we were in.
You could tell.
Yeah. And he, one day in particular, I was coming home, and I, our faith is really central to both of our lives. And I wasn't mad at God. I wasn't upset. My heart was just broke. I had like a physical pain in my chest when I left there that day. And I got to the stoplight, and I just lost it. I did this. I was just leaned over the steering wheel sobbing because my heart was broke at what I saw, And this gentleman that was parked beside me kind of waved me, a young man, and he finally got my attention. I looked over, and he rolled his window down. He said, "Ma'am, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be okay. My husband's in the hospital, and he's just real sick." And this young man reached his hand out to me and began to pray for me. And so I firmly believe that God put us in each other's paths for the encouragement that I needed at that moment. Because I, in the beginning, would not allow myself to break down and cry because I felt like that meant I didn't have faith that God was going to see me through. But what I learned was tears don't negate our faith. Mm-mm. It's okay to express those emotions. Even Jesus cried when he was here on earth.
Right.
So that is just a natural. And once I allowed myself to do that, I was able to deal with things a little bit better.
Yeah, it helps to let some of that out.
Yes.
I know. I mean, it's a lot of grown men don't want to cry, but I'm a crier.
Yeah.
Boy,
I mean, I let her go.
I let her go. I didn't
can't
cry
help
for
it,
40-something years,
Yeah.
but boy, I love it.
I'll
man.
cry 3 or 4
bet.
times during this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So you're what? How far in a month into this, and now it's setting in that this is not just COVID. I'm in and out in a couple of weeks. This is on a ventilator. Things are serious. You can't communicate with him. Mm-hmm. You don't know what to do. You've still got life is going on.
Yes, bills are coming
around
in.
you, and you got to do something.
Truck's
what happens?
Not running.
Yeah,
It's just sitting there.
And one of the things that a decision I had to make early on was our tithes are set up to in an automatic draft every week. How much we have set aside for tithes, so I don't have to mess with that every week. It just automatically comes out. And in the when I realized, okay, this is not going to be a short-term thing, the thought immediately came to my mind, oh, wow, we have no income coming in. I need to get that tithe draft stopped. And immediately God spoke to my heart. And he said, do you not trust that I will take care of you?
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, God. And so I made the decision right then and there. Okay, God, you know what's in our checking account. And if you're telling me to keep that tithe coming, I'll just keep it going. And I was just stunned at how Jeff's coworkers and the Oakley drivers, without any prompting, without me even asking, thousands of dollars began to come into our mailbox.
Wow.
I would open the mailbox, there would be a $2,000 check.
Wow.
I would open the mailbox, there was a $3,000. I mean, people that are living paycheck to paycheck just like we were. And not to mention this was coming into December and Christmas time, and finances are usually tight for everyone in that month. And not just the money. I would get phone calls from people that knew Jeff, but I had never met. Some I'd never even heard their names before. And they would say, is there anything you need? Yeah. Is there anything we can do for you?
People want to help.
Yeah.
And that's an awesome story where you don't even have to ask for it, and they know.
They know.
These are you guys. These are Oakley guys.
Yeah.
That are. Yeah. But not just Oakley, but anybody. Whether they were at Oakley or not, they're going to help.
Yes.
And that's just that's an awesome part of the story. So you were able to continue the tithe, continue paying the bills.
Yep.
Yes.
And not knowing what's next.
Yep. Not knowing what's next.
We haven't missed a payment.
We've not been late on a payment. We've
Nothing.
not missed a payment. We've not been in want or need for anything.
Yeah, we haven't even been close.
Nope.
That is fantastic, isn't it?
I mean, that's how God is.
And you still...
He's above and beyond.
And that's been since November?
Yeah, that was November the 18th when I went into the hospital.
Okay.
So I'd been sick since the 14th. So
and here it is June, and you're still...
here it is June. We're still... I mean, we know it's him because it's miraculous.
Yeah.
If you can't explain it, it's God, and I can't explain it.
So tell us about the part where, I'm assuming you came to, I don't know the details, but we're
December
really close
the 29th, I started coming to, but as my wife will tell you, it took 3 or 4 days. First, they're unplugging me from a lot of this stuff that when you're on the vent and putting you on the stuff when you're in the hospital bed. So I'm still in pain. I still don't know what's going on. So a couple of days there, I had to get adjusted to it. And then we start talking. Well, we may talk about the same thing 3 or 4 times because we'll talk about it and we'll go a little while. Then I'll ask her again because I'm not remembering. So that had to be tough on her. But I knew enough that I'd say, baby, that's fine. That's a good decision. You're doing great. Because we follow what God wants us to do. And she was just following what God was telling her. She would pray about it before she'd done something. God, what do I do? Because she didn't know what to do.
Right.
And but just like the truck, should I de-lease the truck? Should I do this? And she never did. And she didn't know.
I knew as a nurse, I knew it was going to be a very long recovery. And I just felt God saying, just leave it like it is. Just leave it there. And in my life, I've learned when you don't know what to do and you're not hearing a clear word from God, just don't do anything.
Don't do nothing.
He'll tell you when it's time.
But, about the 2nd or 3rd of January, I'm awake good. I know what's going on around me. That's when I started having trouble with my lungs. The COVID wasn't that big a deal. I mean, it was serious, but it attacked my lungs. So from about the 2nd of January until February, I'm in and out of the OR. They're doing all kind of procedures. I have chest tubes. I wound up with 8. I'd have 2, maybe 3 at one time, but not all of them at one time. But that's very painful.
I bet it is.
Very painful. And the first operation that I had, it was I think they were putting another chest tube in or something. And I've got my eyes closed and I'm praying because at that point in time, I'm terrified.
Yeah, because you don't know.
I don't know because it's not looking good from where I'm at. And I can't do nothing for myself. I've never been in that position in my life. I've always took care of myself, took care of my wife, my kids, whatever, never asked for help. I can't do anything. So anything that goes on with me, my wife or somebody at the hospital is having to do it.
Yeah, and another story of a blessing is that Jeff was in ICU, and how the visiting hours are so strict on ICU, and especially with COVID. And when it finally got to the point that they allowed me to go into his room, I stayed with him from then on. In ICU, and that hospital accommodated me. They deemed me his essential caregiver, which is normally like for maybe a child that has disabilities or whatever, and it's going to require more care than what the nurse is going to, because some patients have to have someone with them 24/7. And so anyway, they deemed me, his doctor did, his essential caregiver. And for the last 2 months of his hospital stay, other than the occasional going home and grabbing this or taking a night at home, or most nights I was there. And so
that had to be difficult, I'm sure, living there.
Yeah. It was. It was that Tyler was our home. We lived out of that hospital room for, the last 60 days.
So you, at that time, you were conscious. I'm assuming you had all these surgery. You had tubes, so you got over COVID, but it attacked your lungs. So you were having lung surgery.
Yeah.
They were trying to
keep my lungs inflated. They kept collapsing.
Okay.
They would get tears in them, holes in them from the COVID attacking my lung lining. And they did 3 procedures called fluoridesis, where they put some kind of powder in there that just burns.
What it does is it burns the lining of your lung to make it irritated and swell, hoping that when it swells, that powder will make the lung stick where it's supposed to. And it's extremely painful procedure. And you have to be awake for that, and it lasts an hour and 20 minutes because they have to inject that powder that starts burning your lungs, and then you have to be rolled from side to side to make sure it gets all in there. And it didn't work.
So what are the doctors and nurses telling y'all at
this
point? Well,
every time yes, I had faith, but as a nurse, I wanted some numbers. I wanted some medical expertise, and they would just say, Lorita, we're sorry, but we just don't know. COVID is so new, and honestly, we haven't had a patient as sick as Jeff make it this far. So
every day was a new road.
yeah. And the thing about it is we would make 3 or 4 steps forward, and I had it in my mind how things were going to go. We're going to keep progressing. And then his lung would collapse again, and we would have to start all over. Or he even got off the vent and was doing so good. His muscles had started working again. He'd started gaining a little strength, had even sat up in bed a couple of times. And he was had a tracheotomy, and he was going to have to learn how to eat and drink again. And we had started that process, and he ended up aspirating, which means some of whatever you eat or drink, instead of going down into your stomach, you get choked and it goes down into your lungs, and then that will set up infection. It turns into what they call aspiration pneumonia. So he got aspiration pneumonia and went back on the ventilator. Ugh. And I was really devastated at that point, because I thought
you were seeing progress, and then he all of a sudden goes back on the ventilator.
Yep.
And what are you thinking, Jeff?
Oh man, just a few days after that was the best and worst of the stay, and I mean we're 3 weeks to getting out of the hospital. We don't know that.
How many days is this probably you're in?
Oh, it was in January. So
yeah, I got out February the 24th. So this was about the 1st of February.
So to let our listeners know,
I've been in there 60 days or better.
You actually got out and then had to go back?
No. I was
still in ICU.
I was still in ICU, but I had got so good they were fixing to put me in a private room.
Oh, okay.
And then I get the pneumonia.
Out of ICU, not out of the hospital.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm following.
And what was so devastating about that is I couldn't breathe. I mean, I told Lorita, I said, you got to have somebody help me. And then it got down to where I just blacked out. And that's why I say that was the worst day and the best day of my stay.
So the best and worst day of your stay.
On that day, I cannot breathe. And I just assumed I died, because I just in my mind, I leaned back and I just told God, please forgive me for being so selfish. Because I've been praying for myself. Please don't let me die. Well, I told him, I said, Lord, I just pray that your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. And it was just like I blacked out. Like I wasn't there no more. And all of a sudden I come into this bright white room. It's just like a room. And I come into it, and there's this hand sticking down from the sky from about his wrist down. And all of a sudden I'm a little boy. 5 years old, feety pajamas, teddy bear, just happy as I can be. And I reach up and I grab a hold of his pinky finger, and he just walks me across this beautiful green pasture, and all I can smell is fresh cut hay. That's what I love, and he knows that. And and it gets weird along that time. I'm happy. I'm supposed to be dead, but I'm happy. But he doesn't take me to heaven. He's not showing me any of my people. As you hear these stories, I'm just walking across this beautiful pasture. All of a sudden, I wake up, and Lorita is looking at me in the face. I'm like, what? And I'm not wanting to be selfish, but I'm not wanting to tell them where I've been.
Yeah, you was in a good place, wasn't you?
Yeah, and the doctors are all in there, and they're looking like, oh, man, we thought you was dead. I'm like, really? I said, I'm not dead.
And three days has elapsed, and to him it's
I'm thinking
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Oh, and it's been 3 days.
It's been 3 days. Yeah. And my numbers had got down so low, my blood pressure, my heartbeat, and it was down low, and the doctors were so concerned because they've done everything they can medically possible. So 3 days after this, one of the doctors comes back in. And he's like, Jeff, can I ask you a personal question? I said, sure. He said, man, what happened?
He came real late at night.
Yeah, it was late at night. It's kind of like the
an
Nicodemus
after-hours visit.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the Nicodemus story.
Right.
Everybody's home in bed, and he shows up to talk to Jesus.
Yeah.
But he's like, man, what happened? I done everything I possibly medically could do for you. And when I left, I knew when I come back that you wouldn't be here. but you're here. What happened? I said, brother, all I can tell you is I've been touched by the hand of God. Is all I got. And he looked at me and he put his head down and he walked out. But you know, when I seen him, because I seen him every day, 2 or 3 times a day, he was smiling from that point on. It touched him too in a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, what that's all about, I don't know, but that's how I remember it, because that's the only reason I'm here today.
Right.
And Jeff, you have to realize, was pretty much their prodigy patient, or whatever you want to call it. They said, you know, you are the first thing we talk about in the morning and the last thing we talk about at the end of the day. Okay, where's Bledsoe? How's he? You know, what's going on?
And these people come to work at 5 o'clock in the morning and don't go home till 7, 8 o'clock at night.
They
That's
rotate.
how dedicated
you know.
these people are.
Right.
You know.
And we were blessed with. Let me just say, if you ever need a cardiothoracic surgeon, Dr. Cacciatolo in Tyler is your man.
Oh, he's a good
And
one.
his staff, yes.
Yeah.
Very
And
good.
see, Jeff has no health insurance, and so he's not doing it for money. Matter of fact, we finally got his hospital bill, and it was $1.4 million. And we saw it online on the little MyChart app, but they never sent us the bill. We never got a paper bill.
Really?
Never got a bill for that.
That's a miracle too.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Yep.
That is a miracle.
It is.
Wow.
And
What a story. And we're just getting started, I
Yeah.
feel like.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking to Jeff and Lorita Bledsoe here, and they're with Oakley Trucking. And Jeff spent 96 days in the hospital with COVID and the effects after COVID. And just talking to them a little bit about their story and what happened, and believe it or not, the blessings that have come out of it.
they have.
Absolutely.
And they keep coming.
How
it's
do they?
not over yet.
I mean,
it's just we run into people all the time. Hey, how are y'all doing? You know, can we do anything for you? And, you know, we've been praying for you. And that, you know, that's another thing. We had so many people praying for us out of country, all states where I have met people. You know, I used to run all over everywhere, and I have friends that are in the missionary deal where they're in Africa, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're in India.
And they got word somehow.
Yeah, and they
yes.
social media or something, I guess.
and they would send me messages on Messenger, you know, from all these other countries. We're praying for you, brother. Hang in there.
I saw a video of you. Somebody showed it, Trevor or somebody showed it to me, of when you started to take your first step. You're on the side of the bed with a nurse, and then you had to stop her and pray real quick, and then get up and take a couple of steps. Now, when was that along the process? Was that
I'll tell you,
where we're
that
at?
was about a little bit after the story I just told, and I was sitting on the side of the bed. They had got me up, and they had went to do something. I'm sitting on the side of the bed, and I can't hardly hold myself up. So I closed my eyes, and I'm sitting there praying. Well, she comes back in, and she says, Jeff, are you okay? I said, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I was praying. She said, Lord, that's what I was doing outside the door. I'm like, well, good, y'all all gather around and let's all pray together, because this is not looking good.
Yeah.
But I wound up making it to the doorknob that day.
Good.
I forgot how many steps it was, 6 maybe. But the day before, I had made 4, 2 forward and 2 backward to get back in the bed.
Because you have to remember, during this whole process of him being on the ventilator, even though they were giving him nutrition through a feeding tube in his stomach, he lost 60-something pounds and was literally skin and bone.
Yeah, he didn't have 60 to lose.
No, he didn't. And he had bed sores. He was just literally looked like a concentration camp survivor. He didn't, I remember one day I was giving him a bed bath and I was washing his face, and I thought, this feels so foreign because it doesn't feel like Jeff. I felt like I was taking care of a patient.
Yeah.
And I was blessed that God had given me that background to be able to do those things, but it just didn't feel or look like Jeff. Even his hands didn't look like Jeff's hands.
He'd lost so much weight.
He'd lost so much weight.
Nutrition.
The skin would just hang off of him. And, those times were just heartbreaking.
Oh,
would just break your heart.
I can imagine
Yeah.
that you just getting
Yeah.
through those days.
Well, just simple things I used to do, like on my truck. I'd pop both hinges on that hood and just grab it with one hand and almost break the springs when I flipped it over. I had to get her to help me to open the hood on that truck. That's
Here
just
recently.
been
Yeah.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, to go from doing whatever you want to you have to have somebody with you to complete the task at hand, that was hard for me to handle.
I was in here one day, and Trevor, your dispatcher at that time,
Yeah.
I think had found out that this. I don't know when part of this story was, but you had gone septic.
Oh, yeah.
Has that already happened? And part
Yeah.
of the story we've told. Because
Well, actually, what happened was I think they thought he had gone septic,
okay.
but they didn't realize that he actually had aspiration pneumonia.
Okay, so that was that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we're
That
at
was
in
the
the story.
first big hiccup that we had. We was doing real good until I got that, and boy, it just
Yeah.
we backed way up.
So now we're the doctors visited you late at night, and you touched his heart,
Yep.
and you're starting to walk a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably day 60-something, 70-something,
Probably,
70-something.
Yeah, we're still about a month from discharge,
And,
Okay,
which
so-
we didn't know. We had
Right.
no idea how long we were going to be
And
there.
they wanted me to get in the chair, so I said, "You're gonna have to get me up. I can't make the chair." So this big dude, man, he grabs me, puts me in the chair. Well, in the meantime, while he's doing that, he pulled up on me so hard he ripped my lung on the right side.
Oh no!
Well, he
Yeah.
tugged on the tube. Yeah, one of the chest tubes
and the
that he
tube.
had.
But anyway, I'm sitting in the chair and I'm like, I said, "Man, I can't breathe." "Oh man, you'll be all right." So, I'll get you some more pain meds. So that's what he did. So the next morning, the doctor comes in early and he's like, "Man, what's wrong with you?" I said, "I don't know, man. I don't feel right. I can't breathe." He said, "Man, okay, I'll be back here in a little bit," because they took an X-ray every single morning of my chest just to see where all the others were at. So he comes in about 1:30 and he's like, "Jeff, you've got a tear in your lung on the right side.
Oh no!
I don't know where it's come from, but there's a pinhole in it." Said the tear, don't let that scare you. That was just a tissue, but there is a hole in it. And it's so small I can't pinpoint it. So I had to go to the CT scan. So the guy puts it in while I'm in the CT,
a chest tube.
a chest tube.
Another chest tube.
Because he's got a big picture of it and he don't want to poke it in the wrong place.
Oh yeah.
So we had that done, and I got to where I could breathe in. Well, maybe 2 days goes by, and he says, "What's all healed up?" And they pull it out. Well, I've still got one on my right side that is big around as my pinky finger. And I mean, it is painful.
They go in about
Yeah.
2 foot. That's
She
how
has a
much
video
of the tube is.
How long it takes for it to come out.
Golly.
Yeah.
But it was just constant care, and there was something happening every day. Seemed like,
So you're still thinking you don't know if you're going to
it could any day.
get out of
I
here
mean,
or not.
yeah. They have an atrium that they have these tubes hooked to, and they bubble, and it's water and it's air coming out of your lungs. Well, this thing looks like a jacuzzi, and you can hear it just bubbling and carrying on.
Pulling the air out of his leaking
pulling
lung.
where it's not supposed to be. And he kept telling me, "Hey, when this quits, we'll send you home. Or when it calms down." Well, I can hear it. I don't have to, which I can't bend over and look at it. It's kind of under the bed, but I'm like, I can hear this thing. It sounds like a roaring river. I'm not going nowhere. So,
Right.
and I'm just going to have to give all the glory to God on this one, because I prayed one day, and it was like a Wednesday. I get out Monday. So this is how tight this is running. They're saying, "Hey, if it calms down, we'll send you home with them tubes." And I keep telling Lorita, I'm not going home with these tubes.
Yeah.
They're just too painful, and if you turn the wrong way, it's jabbing you. But I just prayed, and it was on Wednesday night. I said, "Lord, if it's your will, would you just please stop the bubbling where they can pull that tube out?" Well, he comes in Thursday, and he's like, "Hey, that thing's a whole lot better than it was yesterday." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "It's not hardly bubbling at all." So they come in Friday. "Hey, it has quit bubbling. We're going to pull your chest tube out."
Hallelujah.
And they
The
did,
last
and we
one.
go home Monday. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
But it wasn't over then.
Oh, it wasn't? This is you didn't have, did you have to go back?
No, but I went home. And I wound up getting sick from all the medicines they had given me.
For the first probably 30 days that he was out of the hospital, I mean, we were stuck together like glue. There was a lot of things that he couldn't do for himself. But anyway, after we realized that this just wasn't some normal diarrhea or gastrointestinal problems, they figured out that he had C. diff and gave him some medicine for that. So even at home, the first 30 days was up and down and back and forth.
Debating on whether you need to go back or not.
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And I'm not wanting to go back.
And he had lost what little bit of strength he had in the hospital, and even more weight, you know. And so it was just the whole thing, I can only equate it to a huge roller coaster. Man, you have really high highs and really low lows.
Yeah.
And you just have to hang on for the ride, because just when you think you have it figured out and how it's going to go, you are so mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, it throws you a curve.
It does. It does. And he had gotten so weak. When he first woke up from the ventilator, he was not even strong enough to move his fingers. He was basically a total bed care patient.
Well, I mean, after 90 days in the hospital bed, and, you know, not hardly doing anything.
Yeah, they
do
had
anything.
me that way because of my lungs.
Yeah.
You know, and they kept wanting to get me up, but like I say, the one time they got me up and put me in a chair, it ripped my lungs, so he was like, well, this is a bad idea. So they didn't do that no more. So
I still remember the first day Jeff was he would lay in the bed, you know, with his palms up, just laying there, and he would watch TV, and the sedation meds hadn't completely gotten out of his system, so he was just kind of blank in his affect. And I remember the day that he turned his hand over. I jumped up off the little cot I was on, and I was like, do that again. and you know, he really wasn't strong enough to do it a second time until he rested. I mean, and that's the point of weakness that we had to come back from.
And that, I mean, that you don't realize how much strength it takes just to talk, to breathe, to move your hands, to do things. I guess it's humbled a grown man, hasn't it?
It humbled me more than I've ever been humbled before. I look at everybody I meet totally different. Totally different.
And we, you know, stress can make people nippy, or, you know, and we've spent all this time together cooped up in this little hospital room, and it's not comfortable for either one of us by any means, but we really learned how to give each other grace.
Exactly.
You know, you're nippy, that's okay, I'm going to pray for you.
Yeah.
Instead of me getting nippy back.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, or vice versa, because I was nippy
Yeah.
too. And we really learned the importance, even after being married for as many years as we've been married, we really learned how to be graceful with each other. And, you know, we've always said that we wanted to be able to just spend time together, because he's been on the road for so many years. I was staying home, raising the kids, and then just about the time we got our last one just moved out, not too long before this. And so, you know, you got to be careful what you ask for.
You got to spend a lot of time together.
And still, you know, even now, I'm able to go out and do a few things and go to the river and just reset myself mentally, physically, and emotionally. And, you know, it has to be hard on him because he's not strong enough to do any of those things yet.
But you look good. You look great.
I've come a long way.
I was going to say, what kind of weight?
I went to the doctor Wednesday, this last Wednesday. I'm at 182 pounds.
Nice.
When I went in, I was 209. I probably should have been about 200. So she told me, let's just stop right here and see if we can plane it out and slow it down, because I've been eating everything I can get my hands on.
182 pounds now, gaining a little bit of strength back. You
Yep.
were at, what was your lowest weight?
In the 140s. We don't know exactly.
150 is what I remember.
Wow.
But I was way sicker before they told me that, you
Right.
know. So I lost it real quick.
So you got home, you spent a month glued together. You're getting to where you're eating a little better, getting your meds right.
Yep. Getting my appetite back, and
things are getting a little bit better week by week. I know you said earlier, that is either you or a doctor told you to don't look at it day by day.
Oh yeah.
Look at it week by
week. They
week.
told me that from the get-go, because by talking with me when I got my voice back, they could tell, kind of who I was, and Lorita tells on me pretty often, but he would tell me, look, man, this go-getter stuff's not going to get this. All this going to do is get you depressed and wish you was somewhere else, Said take it week to week, take it easy. If you feel like you need to rest. Well, that wasn't in my DNA.
No.
Before. I just went at it, I know what he's talking about. I'll have a busy day, and the next day I may just have to sit in a recliner all day.
All day.
Like, because
we usually stay pretty active on weekends because our kids, are free on weekends, and we do a lot of things with our church. And so he usually is pretty active on Saturday and Sunday, sometimes even Friday. And then it'll take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of resting to build that strength back up.
Are your lungs building back up?
Yeah,
though?
they are, but it's a slow process. Like, they're still a little tight, and that's from the ribs and muscles, but it's about time that I start exercising, because before I didn't have nothing to exercise with.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start exercising. I got me a bicycle. I bought it way back when I first got out of the hospital, one of them stationary bicycles. Yeah, it's sitting over there. It looks good. I think I've been on it 3 times. About 3 minutes, I'm like, whew, this is no good.
Well, I bet you'll get back to it.
I will. I want to. The want to is there. And I pull a hopper here, and I unlatched that handle the other day. I was going to roll that tarp over. No, it looked good hanging there when I finally let go of it. And that's sad to me, which is not sad what I've been through, but you can't raise the hood on your truck.
Yeah.
And you can't unroll your tarp. And to me that was just easy. That wasn't no effort needed. You could do that in your sleep. We just roll that baby right over, and I can't even turn it.
And Jeff's identity has always been strongly tied to his work and his work ethic. He for many years has been a workaholic, and even before this had said, we're gonna not always do the extra load every week, and start spending some time together, taking a few trips here and there, and he's just always been so work minded that
it's what pays the bills.
Yeah. Yeah. How old are you, Jeff?
I'm 57. I just had a birthday.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Well, thank
birthday.
You. I'm glad to be here.
I know you're just so people know you're not back to driving yet.
No.
You're not strong enough, not where you can do it yet. But you have got somebody in your truck.
I do.
And I guess we started at 2 months ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, right at that.
We had
I got
good guy here. That
real
got a friend
nice
of yours
young man. Yeah, his dad. We've been friends for 30 some odd years, I guess, known each other. And how that happened, he called me one day, because I guess they had been talking about it, wanting to help me out, is how it started. And he said, what do you think about him driving your truck? I said, well, I hadn't thought about it, because I didn't know it was an option. And I really didn't. So I called Scott, and he made a few phone calls, and was no problem. He's already driving Bobby's truck, so he just was able to step in mine, and he's been doing us an excellent job.
I'm sure
an
that's
excellent
helped
job.
a lot,
And he's a real nice young man, and that's another God thing. Some people may get tired of hearing me say that, but how else does that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, just out of the blue one day you get a phone call, and other people have been thinking about you and what you're in, and know, because they do what I do, that truck's just sitting there. It's not making no money. And what's bad about being a truck owner is the bills never stop. You can park it all you want to, but everything else keeps coming. And Oakley has treated us great on that. And that's another God thing. I can't thank him enough and give him enough glory, but I have to thank Oakley too. Like when when I did get sick, and I hadn't talked to these guys in a couple of days because I was so sick. And, they're calling my wife. A lot of them didn't have her phone number, but they found it. And they called her, hey, can we do anything for you? Yeah. How bad is Jeff? What's going on? And like I say, the money just started coming.
Yeah.
I had 2 or 3 truck payments made. I don't know who done it. The bank won't tell me because they didn't want to be recognized.
Right.
But I thank them too,
That's
and
awesome.
that is awesome. That's an awesome testimony to the drivers that I work with.
Yeah. Well, you're one of them. I mean, we got some good
Yeah.
people at Oakley Trucking, including you.
Yeah.
And
And
a lot of people, you just it gives them an opportunity to do good
Yes.
things
Yeah.
that a lot of people want to do. And there's a lot of people in the world that want to do good
They
things.
do.
I mean,
And Jeff's used to being the giver, not the receiver.
Right.
But
yeah,
you know,
we've always done this.
I've had
always.
to tell him, don't block other people of the blessing of helping because they're going to get
exactly.
blessed
Yeah.
for that. And so
Exactly.
it's been a little bit easier for him to accept in that mindset.
Well,
that,
it's in the humble. I've been humbled to let people help me, because God is touching their heart to help me. Why would I want to block that? Because I
That's
don't
right.
like it when people try to block me when I go to help
That's
them,
right.
So,
tell me, you said you've preached twice
yeah,
since
since
you
this.
got to feeling bad.
Yeah.
Tell me how'd that go, and
Well-
I got to know, what did you preach on?
Okay. Well, I don't know if I can remember or not.
he does a Bible study every morning, and so sometimes he,
Sometimes it's a lot to do with it, but this last time I preached was on Jehovah Jireh. Now, there's a story behind that, which Jehovah Jireh means the God that provides. And it starts with Abraham sacrificing Isaac. to
taking
God.
him son.
Up.
Getting
He's
right
going
up
to.
to the point.
Right.
And, he looks up and there's a ram stuck in the bush. Okay, well, let's back up a little bit and think about that. This ram's coming up the backside of that mountain. Is Abraham's getting Isaac ready to sacrifice? Well, that's why God doesn't always let us know what's going on. Because what would Abraham have done if he knew that ram was coming up the backside of that mountain?
It wouldn't have taken
Now-
the faith.
His faith was so strong that he knew if he did kill Isaac, that God would resurrect him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what brought him to this point. Same way with Gideon, And I told the story of Gideon. He takes 30,000 Mennonites out with 300 guys. And his faith is so strong by the time this happens, he's like, hey, if any of y'all got something else you'd rather do, or if you're afraid or you don't want to fight, y'all go on home. We got this.
Yeah.
Now, see, and he built this faith in these men over a short period of time. And it's just like us out here on the road. A lot of times we're in such a hurry. I don't have time. But what I have found
That's all right.
when I have stopped to help someone, or if I've just talked to someone, or just listened to someone, you can pretty much tell I have never lost that time. I've never been late to deliver, but I've done what God wanted me to. Stop and pray with somebody, a total stranger at a truck stop. They just need someone to know that somebody cares,
Yeah.
Well, that's the point of my sermon is if we will trust God, He will provide. And that's where I was humbled in this whole experience. That one night when I was praying, I learned to trust God. I always said I trusted God, but I never really had to. I had to trust Him this time because I couldn't do nothing.
You thought
Couldn't
you
use
were,
my body. I couldn't do nothing.
You thought you were strong in faith
I did
until
it was tested.
it was tested.
Yes, sir. And
And me as well. I remember one day, and I showed Jeff when we went to Tyler the other day, exactly on the road where God spoke to me. And it was on one of my trips where I was just going to get to see Him through the glass. And I was just, it was the day after the young man prayed for me.
I don't
at the
guess you've ever
stoplight.
seen him again, have you?
No. No. And I was thinking about that interaction and what boldness it took for a complete stranger, or if God sent me an angel, whatever it was, the boldness of that person to reach out, not even knowing me or knowing my strengths or weaknesses, or how much I believed in God or didn't, and so I was traveling along, and I began to think about Jeff's medical condition, and the report I had gotten the night before was not a good report, and my heart was just real heavy, and God spoke to me and said, trust me. And I thought, well, God, I do trust you. And he's like, trust me. And I realized in that instance that saying I trusted God did not mean I was going to get the outcome that I wanted. I had to trust that no matter what the outcome was, that God would sustain me. And so that has been a real point. I have had people message me or even call me, talk to me in person. My loved one has COVID. Please tell me, what did y'all pray? What did you do? How, in their mindset of wanting to know what they could do to get the same outcome that we had, I just had to let them know. I just had to trust that God would sustain me no matter what he chose.
What the outcome was.
What the outcome was.
That's that's the next step there. You get that step farther when you're fully trusted, in him then at that point, because you didn't know what was going to happen.
I didn't, and things were not looking good.
Yeah.
No.
But now you're preaching.
Yeah, back to
you
preaching.
Got two in it. So
What's
the future hold?
I heard God tell me 3 times while I was down with the COVID to preach, and that's the only word I heard. And then he gave me Psalms 91 one night. That's all he said, Psalm 91. Well, I asked Lorita, I said, could you read that? Because at the time, I couldn't pick my Bible up. It was too heavy. It only weighs 5 pounds, but I couldn't hold it up to read it. And so she read it to me. And, it speaks of God being our provider, our protector, everything. Get under my wings, I will protect you. Just trust in me.
And the crazy part about that is when he was still on the ventilator and out, I read Psalms 91 to him many times. And even when I was at home and the nurses would FaceTime so I could at least see him, I would have them hold the phone and I would recite Psalms 91 and pray that prayer over him.
Wow.
Psalms 91, was written by David, and it just talks about how God loves us enough that he's going to take care of us, going to protect us.
Yeah, and I had no idea
that
she had done that.
And also, when he was still on the ventilator, being a nurse, I know that they balance those drugs so delicately to where you're just sedated, but you're not, too far or too little. And so sometimes patients will begin to wake up while they're on sedation. They may open their eyes and look around. Well, then they know they need to bump the drugs up a little bit. So I went and bought a little CD player, and I had the nurses take it in his room and tune it to the local Christian radio station, because I wanted him to have that comfort if he woke up, because our Christian music, we love it, and has gotten us through some really hard times. And so I did that, and I also put some pictures, and also we believe it because the Bible says it, that at the mention of Jesus' name, Satan has no choice but to flee. And so I thought, I want the whole room to be full of Jesus.
Screaming Jesus.
Yes.
Screaming Jesus.
That's it.
And one nurse, when I gave her the radio for her to take in, I said, my husband's a minister. And she said, I knew it. I knew he just has minister written all over him.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it is.
Do y'all still hear from them?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, daily. Daily.
Yeah,
And
we're
there's
all
actually
friends with them on Facebook. We're big
one-
Facebook people, and that's how we keep up with them. And we went down there Monday. I had a friend that was having cancer surgery, and we went down and we got to see a lot of them.
Did you?
Yes.
Sure did, yeah.
Like
And
a reunion down
they
Just
there.
like
said,
a reunion,
what
yeah.
are you doing, taking a victory lap around here?
Yeah.
Nurse, and we actually saw the nurse practitioner, Brandy, that was, there with us in the
All the
trenches
time.
daily.
She would get the job to come in and tell us what was fixing to happen.
Right.
No matter how bad it was, And she was always honest. When she went to do that one procedure, she said, "Now, Jeff, this is going to hurt worse than anything that's ever happened. Are you ready?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." Mr. Tough Guy. I wasn't ready. That's when it lasted, an hour and 26 minutes. I was just, just hanging on because it hurt worse than anything I ever had
What
done.
would you do without this one?
I'd just been done.
I mean, it sounds like, Lorita, you have done so much.
That's why I tell people
It's
this
just
is
an
her
amazing story
Yeah.
that what she has gone through, too.
The faith that she had to show
Right.
with me out, and her being my better half, having to take care of all our business, plus try to take care of me, and she come down almost every day
And our kids were devastated.
and couldn't see me. I mean, she could just look through the window. How many people do that?
Right, yeah.
Well, I can't see him. I'm not going to go. It's a waste of time. Just every chance she was.
As soon as the door cracked, she moved in.
That's it.
Yep.
And I'm so thankful, which I'll just say there's a couple of times that I don't know how it would have come out if she hadn't have been there.
There was one time
Yeah.
that he had the trach, so the tube wasn't down his going through his mouth. It was hooked to that hole in his throat, and somehow he had so much secretions that it got stopped up. And I was asleep on the little couch thing. It was during the night, and the only way you can make sound when you have a trach is if you block that off. Well, it had gotten clogged up, had got a clog in it, and he was suffocating. And it blocked it off enough that he was able to say, "Lorita." And when he said my name, I popped up and I was like, "What?" And he said, "Hurry, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And I was in a dead sleep, and so I was just kind of panicked and not really knowing if I was dreaming or what was happening. And so I pushed the alarm button, and everybody came running in. And of course, all they had to do was pop that off to get it unoccluded. But there was that time. I mean, if I hadn't have been in the room,
Yeah.
his oxygen saturation would have had to have dropped low enough, and them realize it on the monitors outside. Anyway, there were several times that I thought to myself, what do people do that don't have a loved one in the room?
Staying with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like the button, you push to call the nurse. I couldn't push
He
it.
couldn't push the button.
So that wasn't doing no good.
Yeah.
So if she hadn't been there, I had a little bell. I had my daughter get me a little bell at the dollar store where I could, and it didn't make much noise, but
he couldn't even hardly ring the bell, but he
Yeah.
could tap it.
yeah, I could tap it on something.
And so that's our little souvenir from
Yeah.
this whole hospital thing was the little. Oh, he got to where he could ring it pretty
He
good.
could.
yeah, that's when they took it away from me.
Oh,
But
man.
no, it's wonderful to have a helpmate like I've got, because I don't know what I'd do without her.
Well, and it's good to hear such a good story.
Yeah.
A bad story, but a good story. And we all know that a lot of stories don't turn out
No,
Hey,
that's
that's
as
true.
good. And
That's true.
And y'all have been through a heck of a
We have.
ordeal. And it's just I'm glad that you came and shared it with us.
Yeah.
And tell about your story
Yeah.
and your feelings, and
Yeah.
open it up to people that want to
Sure.
listen to it. And I think
Sure.
it's great testimony. I mean, of your marriage,
Sure.
of your faith. It's just
Yes.
fantastic.
And they're
story.
saying the end of the summer, when they sent us home from Tyler that day, they said, by the end of the summer that he'll be as close to pre-COVID as he's probably going to get, and which they think will be pretty close to he may have some deficiencies in his lungs where he may get out of breath if he really exerts himself.
Yeah.
But the lungs will eventually get stronger than they are now because they're still pretty weak.
Yeah, but as long as they continue to get stronger.
Yeah,
So
we got a good report Wednesday. It was real uplifting from the doctor. She's like, "Hey, you're right on schedule. Everything's looking good." So
We just have to be patient.
yeah, just be patient.
can't
And
wait to get back in that truck.
I don't know. It's bittersweet.
We've
But no,
enjoyed the
really.
time together.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
And that's another thing we learned is to try, even though things may not be perfect, enjoy the season you're in.
Yep.
Yeah.
We even did date night in the hospital. We'd get popcorn and watch a movie, and we just tried to enjoy
Just
each
make
other.
the best of what you got wherever you're at and whatever the season.
Yeah.
That's
So we
kinda
had
where
date
we're at.
night in
Same way with
ICU.
the truck. That's all I've ever done is drove that old truck, and I want to get back in it and conquer it because I've been in it twice. It wasn't good. I had to get out of it, which I never did move it, but I just wasn't strong enough to.
He couldn't hold the clutch.
Couldn't
It
hold the
popped.
clutch in.
Right. Yeah,
Which that clutch is pretty stout on
yeah,
that
I was
truck.
going to say, those ain't
And
easy to do.
I got it pushed in. I put the truck in reverse, which I'm in this big giant parking lot, nobody around me. And I went to let out on it, and it come on out.
Well,
Anyway, I'm getting stronger, and the doctors know what I'm up against, and they're going to let me know when I'm medically sound to go, and I will be physically able, or I won't get in it because I don't want to be a danger to nobody.
no, we look forward to you getting back.
Yeah, and I look forward to getting back to work. I really do.
Well, I appreciate y'all coming.
Well, I
Appreciate
thank you for
hanging out
asking
here.
me to come up.
I
I
think
never
it's-
thought of it.
I think it's a great story,
Yeah.
and hopefully our listeners will enjoy it.
I hope they do.
I bet
Yeah.
they will. And if y'all got any comments on the podcast and want to get in touch with Jeff or Lorita, send me a comment, and we'll put you in touch with them. And
Absolutely.
of course, I'm sure they can find you on Facebook too.
Oh, yeah, we're both on Facebook.
So we can check them out on there too. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, anything else y'all like to share before we're done?
I guess that's it.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate
Yep.
y'all coming.
Well, thank
Appreciate
you for having
everybody.
us.
You bet. Appreciate everybody listening to the Oakley Podcast. And if you got any questions, let us know, man. We look forward to it every week, bringing you something
Amen.
new. And this was definitely a new one for y'all. So have a good week. We'll talk to you next week.